Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company and MLSID, number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your Director of Fun and Games for the afternoon. Joining me today, fresh from the Danny Briere press conference, it's Philadelphia's number one hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor.
Yeah, just coming in from over the border, the border of New Jersey. The both bridges were absolutely a mess today. Not going to Jersey, but coming back, the entirety of the Walt was shut down, at least on the other side going back into PA. And then you're like, all right, well, no big deal. I'll just take the Ben. Ben has one lane open.
It often has one or two lanes only going into Philly. I just am concerned
about,
like, why does the bridge need to be worked on every day? Should we start thinking about building a new one?
Oh,
that's my question.
Possibly.
Like, you start putting up one right next to it. By the time you're done, we can stop doing work on this old one. I don't know. It just seems like big infrastructure project. They're raising all the light poles in Jersey. It's taken goddamn 100 years. But anyway, Danny Briere spoke today. Danny Briere spoke to the press. We're 8 days out from the 2024 NHL entry draft. Flyers currently picking at 12 and let's call it 31.
31 and a half.
He said 32 today. Danny did. And I was like, he's preparing for the inevitable. But there was a lot of information in there. Honestly, my favorite part, we'll get to it, is the face he made when Mishkov came up. He knows something. Telling you he knows something.
You're reading.
Yeah, it's that time of year, man. That's what we do. But we're going to start with just the draft itself, where all the rumors come out yesterday. Danny was funny, saying, like, it's been pretty quiet, and I guess something came up, and now all of a sudden I have all this work to do. You freaked out half the league. That was pretty funny. Like, everyone's calling me, like, so what are you doing?
Hey, blame Travis Yost. He's the one who started it.
Blame Travis Yost. But I just wanted to, one of the first things he talked about, we've been discussing for 2 months now, the lack of predictability in this draft, because there seems to be obviously the consensus at 1. And Danny kind of said, like, yeah, okay, let's call it 2 through 5.
Yeah, he basically said
it could be any order.
2, 3, 4, 5. So you're thinking guys like the guys that come to mind immediately. He's assuming Lev Shinov isn't going to get past 5. He's probably assuming that Salayev isn't going to get past 5. There's been a lot of talk about Caden Lidstrom not getting past 5, and then Demidov. So you're figuring that he's looking at those 4 probably as guys who most likely it would take a lot for them to get to 12. Everyone else appears very much to be on the table. And
that's where I kind of wanted to start here. And he didn't say, like, yes, we are trading for pick 7. It is happening. Like, that's not what he said.
Of course not.
No, that would be silly. He said, we're looking to move up. We might need to move back, but it has to make sense. Everything is on the table for us. We're not stuck in one mode of trying to move up or move back. And just playing off of the rumors from yesterday. Now, this is going to take some of what he said and then some conjecture, because that's what we're going to do today. Like, if there's not a lot of predictability in the draft, does it make sense to trade up prior to, like, the pick you want actually happening? Like, we're looking to trade up to 7. Let's say that's what they're... Why? If you have no idea who's going to be there, because there is no predictability. Like, oh, we want Yaka. Yeah, he went 4. Like, all right, well, what did you give up to trade up? Does that... Like, what did you take from that whole conversation, plus the stuff that may or may not be true from yesterday?
It's a reasonable point. That said, there would be an incentive for you to make the trade early if you are going to make the trade. And the incentive is simple. Yes, you don't know who's going to be there at 7 now, but also you don't know who's going to be there at 7 now. Like, if Demidov slips to 7, then suddenly if you try to make that trade at the draft, it might cost more. Because that pick is more valuable because you know what it is.
You're trading for a guy.
Right.
It's the same as, like, if that player was, or you're trading for a roster player, like, there's an actual value to this. You want this dude, not you want this asset that may or may not be worth something.
But I mean, the flip side is theoretically it could be cheaper if it turns out that the draft goes chalk and there's nobody really there. But if the Flyers, in theory, were looking to trade up to 7 and going by what Danny said today about his theory that like 2, 3, 4, 5, fairly predictable, at least in terms of who they are.
Yeah.
Maybe not who's going to take which player.
It's going to be those guys.
But the guys. Maybe if you're Danny and you're thinking, well, after that top 5, we have 3 guys who we think are on the level of those guys in the top 5. Do we cross our fingers and hope that one of those 3 gets to 12? Or do we trade up to 7 and guarantee we're going to get one of them?
I very much appreciate Danny, the way he speaks when he talks about things like this. And it was very much on display today where he's like, we might get the same player at 12 as if we traded back to 15. Like, that's the way we've been talking about this draft.
Yes.
Because the prospect, like, listen, you have your biases, you trust your scouts, but it's like this level of prospect, let's call it like an even B. We think there's 4 guys who might be in this, and they're all Bs. Well, yeah, it would make sense to move back, get more assets, and draft the same level of player. I really appreciated him kind of speaking the way we do and not doing the, well, everyone's there. Like, no, when you're grading prospects, you can only know so much. You have to just trust your evaluation.
There were interesting tidbits. Like Danny obviously was keeping his cards close to the chest. Of course he is. He's a general manager. He doesn't want other teams to know too much. But there were a lot of interesting little tidbits that were thrown in. One that I found legitimately interesting, and it was actually in the very beginning of the presser, and it might have like slipped by some people. I feel like the general consensus in the public sphere is that so you have Celebrini at 1, and then you have like 2 to 14 or maybe 15 are in that second tier where everybody's kind of in a blob. Danny, interestingly enough, when he was talking about that tier, he basically, this is the quote, there's a lot of good players, especially in the top probably 16 or 17 in the draft. That's interesting to me because that tells me that maybe, I'm viewing the cutoff to be 14, that's where the elite guys, the guys with that type of elite prospect potential, that's where it stops. Sounds like they might have maybe 2 or 3 more that they view on that level. It's interesting.
Because I noted the same thing. The number that he gave was a little higher than what we've
higher than the consensus
than we've been estimating.
Yeah. So there appears to be maybe, unless he's just throwing up an intentional smokescreen.
Sure.
There appears to be maybe 2 or 3 guys that the general consensus does not view to be like high-end prospects that the Flyers view to be high-end prospects. And that actually opens the door maybe a little bit to the possibility of a trade down because, hey, if you think like, and I'm just throwing out a name,
please,
like
no.
Let's say the Flyers view Adam Jiricek to be because he's a guy I did the prospect profile on him yesterday within our video series. If the Flyers view him to be on the level of Carter Yakimchuk, Lev Shunov, Salayev, if they view him as part of that group, and you can get him at 17 and trade down and pick up an early second or a first for next year or 2 years down the road, something like that, maybe you consider it. Maybe you get an overpay and you still get a guy who you view to be a high-end prospect. I'm not saying they're going to do it. I'm just saying that little tidbit he threw in there, it opened the door a little bit to, I wonder if maybe they would consider trading down to not out of the first round, but down 4 or 5 picks because they think they can still get a high-end guy and pick up more assets.
That makes sense. When he said that, initial thought was Trevor Connolly's on their board. That's what I like.
I would be surprised, but you know what? I'm not saying I'm definitely ruling it out, but based on what the Flyers have prioritized in the past and how much they're focused on culture, I just would be surprised if he's a guy that they are targeting. But you're not wrong in terms of pure talent. He is a guy who, talent-wise, probably should be in that top group. Just at least at the back end of that top group.
You make a good point about the culture and everything. Like the point we make about the Eagles, it's like you can take the risk because it's established.
Yes.
And the Flyers, while they value it highly, I'm not so much convinced the culture just isn't. Everyone's terrified of the coach. you know, like,
Fair.
and as soon as like, okay, we're going to lose some veteran. Let's say they traded Scott Lawton. Does then like, what's the culture now, you know? And if that's the case, would they be willing to take that risk? It was just the first thing that I thought,
That's fair.
because as you noted, like the number was 2 or 3 guys higher than like the general estimate has been.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
Which is a
okay,
little eyebrow
who's
raising. Who's the guy?
who would fit into that? And I'm thinking, okay, the guy who might be good enough, as good or better than some of these other dudes, but as we've noted, character concerns.
Yeah. Well, the flip side of that too, and this is, you know, because trading down is not exciting for fans. They hate the idea.
Howie does it, and it's genius.
Yeah, well, because
But if-
Howie has built up
yeah,
the
if-
credibility that he can do whatever the hell he wants at the
If
draft.
Briere does it, there's going to be some haters, man.
I mean, of
there's going
course.
to be a lot of haters.
Of course, because if you do it, you're probably going out on a limb and saying that, like, I don't know, like a Jiricek, an EJ Emery, a Michael Hayes is just as good as Constellanius, as Carter Yakimchuk. He might be right. In the moment, people are going to be critical. But the flip side of it, and this will be the more exciting idea for Flyers fans, is, okay, let's say the Flyers have 17 guys or 16 guys, not including Celebrate, that they view as in that second tier of high-end prospects. The general consensus is that there's probably only about 13 or 14. If the Flyers were to stay at 12 or whatever, make that pick, and then one of those 3 guys starts falling a little bit, they fall to 22, 23, 24, do the Flyers say, hey, this is a guy who on our board is 13. We maybe trade up out of that 31, 32 slot and get him at 23, 24.
And I've always...
That's the exciting flip side.
That's the exciting part. And that's kind of always... Like on our wish list show, I said 2 top 15 picks. Now, if their thing is there's 17 guys, like, all right, whatever.
Right.
But that always seemed like the path of least resistance to me. Like, yeah, I guess 32 in Lawton could get you 11. I don't know. Like, I don't know the trade value board or anything. Yeah. But, like, 32 and Lawton probably get you 17.
Or even 32, and if you go 30,
Or
if you go 32 at
36.
32 in the Columbus pick.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, that gets me from 32 to 24.
Since
they
you
might.
Yeah, just trying to think of the assets they have. Like, yeah, maybe that's what it takes. And cool.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned the Columbus pick, it came up a little later, but
Yeah.
Very funny again. He's like, do you guys know anything?
Yeah.
Like,
Can you tell him anything?
and it was
Old
basically
Donnie ain't giving me shit.
it's basically what we said yesterday. Like, their GM just got there.
Yeah.
They by rule, he said, and up until an hour after the first round ends, I think is what he said.
That's what he said. Yes.
God damn it. We're never going to know about this. And he's like, yeah, it would help us strategically because if we're drafting at 31, 32, whatever, and then we have another pick coming up to start round 2, like pick 4 of round 2.
Yeah.
Like, it could change what you do strategically.
It could.
Like,
It could change who you pick at 32.
yes.
Because you're thinking to yourself,
we're going to get this guy and this guy.
Yes.
Okay, which one do we prioritize more? Is he going to be there?
Exactly.
And we need to get this guy now at 32. Can we wait at 36? If you don't have 36 and you have to wait till 51.
He's not going to be there at 51.
Yeah,
so if we really like him, we better we maybe should reach a little at 32 because we really like this guy. Yeah, he might be there at 36. He ain't going to be there at 51. And if our scouts are saying this guy's a stud, screw it, pick him.
No, so I thought that was really good way of not telling, like, he doesn't know, but he's able to tell you, like, yeah, no, we are preparing as if we have 36, but we're not going to know until we make 32, maybe.
I would like to think that, because, I mean, hockey is such a everybody is buddies kind of thing. And you have Jonesy in the organization where, like, this is literally one of his jobs is to, like, get information because everybody thinks he's the greatest dude in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I would have to think, and I have to hope that the Flyers, by the time we get to maybe the second half of the first round, they'll at least have an inkling somehow, whether Don Waddell straight up texts Danny and is like, hey, we're keeping the pick, or if they just are starting to hear things in the organization, that they'll at least have an inkling of what direction Columbus is going. I'd hope that that's something the Flyers will be able to figure out before they make the pick at 32.
It would be nice
31.
to know that, like, before the actual having to. I think you put it in online, then you go up and announce now is the way it goes. But, like, it would be nice before they check that box.
Yeah.
to know who it's going to be. Your question about best player available, I thought was good, just to all right, we know you need centers.
Everybody knows you need centers.
Yeah, this is no secret. They say it all the time.
Yeah.
This is like much like we're not a Stanley Cup contender yet. That's not me saying that. It's them. Like
we talked about it last week, 2 weeks ago, where it was possibly your best center prospect in the organization is Owen McLaughlin, who was a 7th round pick.
Might not be a real guy. Who's to say?
I mean, he grew up in Phoenix.
That does not give me much confidence. No, but I just thought that was him saying, yes, obviously we know this, but the draft philosophy question came up later. That was you as well, where it was
right.
We focus. It's more best player available early. You're just trying to get that talent, and then later it's what we need is a defenseman that we think can run a power play one day. It's all right, well, of these guys, who do we think that is?
Yeah.
It's more in the later rounds they focus on organizational need.
So the problem with that, though, and I don't doubt that is the way they look at it, 100%. And it's a fair way to look at it. Hey, we need some size on the back end. So in the 5th round, let's draft a big physical defenseman who's there and see if we can develop him. The problem with that strategy, especially in relation to the issue with their lack of centers in the organization, centers don't last in the draft. Most of the guys who have center potential, even guys who are he might be a 4C, a really good 4C, they don't last past round 4. Cole Knuble is a plausible center prospect. They took him in round 4, and that's about the latest round you're going to have a chance of getting a center. And this is a guy who got passed over by everybody the year before.
Yeah.
And he still went in round 4 because he could be an NHL center, even if his ceiling is 4C. You're not going to get guys with legitimate center potential.
Top 6 center potential.
Definitely not top 6, but even middle 6.
NHL,
once you get past the 3rd round. And you're just not going to.
And I always look at
you can find wingers, but not centers.
Guys with that center potential, I always look at that as that makes sense. It's like a shortstop or the center fielder. The best player plays the toughest position. Yeah. Even if it might not even translate to the NHL, it's that's where they play because they're the most talented, and you would assume the most talented guys go early. That's just kind of a one-for-one sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying that, if their plan is to address...
Fill the center need in the 5th round, it ain't going to work.
There aren't going to be any centers available. They're just not.
We're already 20 minutes in. We've done, one topic here on the Danny Briere thing. You know what that tells me? We're really fired up about this, Charlie. We are excited about the upcoming draft.
Is it possible we may need to chill?
It's possible with still 8 days remaining. We need to chill. I know it's hard. I know it is a difficult thing to do, to take a step back. All the rumors that came out yesterday, my God, rumors about rumors. There might be a rumor that something might happen, and we're just freaking out over it. It's true. And we need to reward ourselves when we make this very tough decision to chill. Just the best possible reward, man. It's an ice-cold Coors Light, because there's no better way to chill than with an ice-cold Coors Light. So whether you're freaking out about the draft, a trade with Ottawa, what the hell they're going to do at the center or defense position, you need to find Blue Mountains in your fridge and enjoy a beer as cold as the Rockies, because when everything surrounding your favorite hockey team is on fire, sometimes you just got to chill. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY hockey. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I'll tell you where we're going to be chilling real hard. It's at the South Philly Chickies and Pete's on Saturday, or on Friday, excuse me. Friday.
Give the right info, Bill.
Friday. Well, we've changed the location. The day has stayed the same. Friday, June 28th, Chickies and Pete's at the Bookbinders Bar is now the location of the PHLY and BSH draft party. Make sure you're there with us Friday, June 28th, Chickies in South Philly for the draft party. We're going to be chilling. Now, we're going to be pretty fired up, but hopefully afterwards we can all choose to chill and share a few, maybe more than a few, ice-cold Coors Lights. All right, back to this Briere presser here. I always appreciate when they reiterate we're not a Stanley Cup contender yet. And Briere said that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, they just need to remind us.
Yeah, just well, everyone, half of the fan base is this isn't a fucking rebuild. So he says, we're listening on everything. We're still looking to acquire assets that can help us in the future. We're not going to, we don't expect to do much on free agency day, a lot of dead money. That was the plan all along. This summer is going to be tough.
Yes.
Just in terms of the financial situation they're in.
Yeah.
Other than a potential hockey trade, Michkov coming over, the stuff we've been talking about for weeks, months, a year, not going to be an active offseason. That's what I took out of this.
Well, definitely not in free agency.
Yeah, free agency especially.
The trade stuff is interesting because I mean, I've heard for a while that the Flyers they're checking around. Danny is. I think what we've seen thus far in Danny Briere's tenure, it's probably the thing I've liked the most about him as a GM, is that he's a creative guy. And it's a huge, huge change of pace from the Chuck Fletcher era, where, Chuck just didn't seem to have any creativity at all in his trades. Danny does. And that's exciting to me because I don't know what they're going to do, but I think there are a lot of opportunities this summer for trades. And I'm not saying they're definitely going to make one, but I mean, as the Travis Yost thing implied, it sure seems like they got some lines in the water.
We talked yesterday about and this is diverting a bit, but we talked yesterday about the Devils trade with Calgary.
Right.
And this thing goes back, like they've been talking about this Markstrom trade since the deadline, and they finally get it done on June 19th it was. It just seems, whether the Travis Yost thing was, throw something, I don't know. Like, if he actually had, the framework is done, or they're just continuing to really talk because both sides covet assets the other one has, whatever it is. There's something there with Ottawa. You have to believe, considering the amount of smoke.
Certain there is something there with Ottawa.
Something there with Ottawa.
I've heard too many things. And to be clear,
there's too many.
This was not because I think I saw someone position it as Charlie's saying that there are talks. No, what I'm saying is that dating back to the last week of February.
Yes, it's
when I talk to people around the league about the Flyers, the name that comes up is Ottawa. It's always Ottawa. So I have to think, if I hear from one person, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. If I hear from four people and it's all different things, it's not even I talk to one person and they're like, oh, they're trading for Shane Pinto. And then I talk to another person and says, yeah, they really like Shane Pinto. I'll talk to one person who'll say Pinto, one person who says Ottawa loves Lawton, and it's it's weird.
There's just too much
but there's just so much there. It leads me to believe that these two sides have definitely been talking, and they've probably thrown around a lot of different possibilities. And maybe that's going to be a big trade. Maybe it's going to be a small trade. Maybe it's going to be no trade at all. But there's just too much smoke for me to believe that there's nothing there.
There has to, there just has to be some sort of, whether the framework is, all right, we're going to work towards, the type of blockbuster they had going with St. Louis last summer that ultimately became Kevin Hayes at 50% for you and me or whatever. Dwindles down to that, or there's a big move to be made. It just seems like something, but we'll talk about that in a second. Still want to hit on a bunch of this Danny stuff. Something that I hope puts some minds at ease. Capitals friendly does not impact the Flyers. They have their own cap management system. They were not one of the teams, I guess, that had a deal with cap friendly and now is scrambling to figure out what they're going to do now that the Washington Capitals own that IP.
Right. Which is good. And look, the Flyers are well funded enough that they should have
the Comcast team.
Yeah. They have a robust enough analytics department. They have people who can program. They have people who can build this type of database. It really just kind of came down to, was it something they prioritize? And Danny claims it's something they prioritize. That's good.
Watching how the cap has been managed for the last my lifetime, it wouldn't shock me if they didn't prioritize the cap at all, but at least it seems as if maybe it's that same app that Chuck Fletcher told us about. Maybe there's a little cap icon in there, but they have something that's cool. Waiting on guidance from the league about Carter Hart.
Yeah.
Now there was the press conference where I guess Gary Bettman was like, "Yeah, it's up to the teams," and Danny threw cold water on that. Yeah, that's what he said, but we have none of the answers that we need for us to be able to make an informed decision. Like, we don't know if we're going to retain his rights. We don't know if there's going to be cap relief. We don't know if, like, he's just going to be a free agent. Like, all of the stuff we have talked about, the logistical stuff with Carter Hart, they still don't have answers on, and they need them by July 1st?
June 30th, I believe.
Yeah, June 30th.
Yeah. My understanding about this has always been that the holdup is the NHL and the NHLPA, that they are trying to come to an acceptable, not even resolution, because it certainly won't be resolved until we find out if these guys are going to jail or not. But some sort of solution, let's say, in the short term to how this is going to work. Because if the NHL does nothing, then it's ultimately going to be on the teams. And the teams are just going to have to decide whether they want to qualify these guys. Like, I mean, with Carter Hart for the Flyers situation, like, if the Flyers qualify him, he's accepting the offer. Like, that's a not insignificant. Like, some of these guys, the qualifying offer will not be that much. Hart, that's $4 million, basically. I mean, he's taking that offer in a second, and then the Flyers have him on their books. And I assume they don't want that. Even setting aside the morality of the situation and whether you want him on your team, like, he's not going to be able to play while this is going on. Now, I guess in theory, and this is, again, goes back to the NHL, which is why you have to involve the NHL. In theory, the Flyers could submit a qualifying offer. Carter Hart could accept the qualifying offer, and then the NHL could do what they did with Hart over the final month and a half of the season, where they basically were like, you get full cap relief. So you're on the books, but also it doesn't count. They could do that. This is why they have to pay attention to what the NHL says, because if the NHL and the NHLPA come to some sort of agreement where there's going to be a reserve list, where there will be no qualifying offers, but you just park these guys on the reserve list until after the legal proceedings are done, and then we figure out what goes from there, but the teams retain their rights. If the two sides agree to that, then maybe that's the way it plays out, and they just kick the can down the road until after the trial's done. I don't know, but I understand why the Flyers are deferring to the NHL on this, because there are a lot of moving parts, and there are a lot of things that the Flyers don't want to just have to do, because if they do this, then this could happen, and then what do we do?
And according to Cap Friendly, the qualifying offer to Hart is almost $4.5 million, 4.479, which was his base salary this past season.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't, and this is, I'm sure, what the NHL is negotiating with the PA. I cannot imagine the NHL wants the headline that teams extended these offers and essentially locked themselves in, like the Flyers would with Carter Hart. Oh yeah, here's $5 million.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't look good for anyone.
And that's the thing. Like, if you're Carter Hart and you don't know if you're ever going to play hockey again,
you're taking that money.
I mean, you're banking it, obviously. And then you've got a guy on your books for another year that you intentionally re-signed who has a sexual assault case hanging over his head. I don't think anybody, not just in the Flyers organization, but in the NHL as a whole, wants to open up that can of worms, which is why, again, the Flyers are deferring to the league.
Yeah, and so we'll just have to wait on guidance there. It would just be the most NHL thing in the world to be like, I don't know, it's on you. Figure it out. Like,
yeah.
It seems like the simplest thing would be handling this like and there's nothing simple about the situation as a whole.
No.
But just in terms of roster management, this would act as like a player who goes international. Like, the Flyers still have original Gus Bus's rights. Like, if Eric Gustafsson wants to come back to the U.S., the Flyers, he's going to be a Flyer, the Flyers have to trade him or whatever. Like, they retain his right. Like, that seems like the simplest way to handle this. But it doesn't seem as if there's a hard and fast rule in the CBA. And if there isn't,
that's the thing.
Then this is a negotiation.
They're running out of time. As you said, like,
there's 10 days.
It's classic NHL to just like wait until the last minute to figure out what the hell they're going to do. Just classic NHL.
I can appreciate the Players Association, which we have criticized going back to the early Broad Street hockey days, kind of being pushovers for this league. I can appreciate them playing a little bit of hardball in this situation. It's just plant plant your flag somewhere else. Like,
but that's the thing with unions.
they have to.
If you are
every situation, these guys pay dues.
Yeah, exactly. They pay dues, and yes, this might not be the kind of situation where the union seems like the good guys because they're supporting guys who may have done a really terrible thing. But you need a strong union to even support those situations, so that the entire union can trust that the hires up and the entire structure is going to support you when you do actually need them, when you are legitimately being taken advantage of as an employee under owners.
Yeah, I don't want to go into a read right out of that. So what we're gonna do is talk about Matvei Michkov.
Okay.
This is the thing I took most from this is Danny's face when the Michkov situation came up. I believe we captured it pretty well here. And Danny's
Love that.
Yeah, he smiles a lot. But I don't
that is absolutely a shit-eating grin.
Yes. And just the way he initially held a straight face and pursed his lips and then just went into this grin. I don't know. Again, this is the dumbest. Yesterday we were breaking down the clothes a 19-year-old is wearing.
Yep, sure were.
This is going to be fucking silly until we have resolution here. But I'm feeling it, man. And he was
You're feeling good vibes here.
We were told, and it was we heard in that article that came out months ago now at this point. By the end of June, we'll have something from this.
Yeah, and it was a good question by Jackie the Inquirer. Basically was is that actually the deadline? And Danny's point is I don't friggin' know. Yeah. And he's right. I think the deadline, it's more self-imposed because SKA St. Petersburg, they want to know one way or the other by the end of June whether this guy is going to be in the mix for them.
Hey, you got that money?
Yeah, they want to know. From my understanding is that their training camp starts around the end of July. So they want a month. They would like to have the knowledge of whether we have to find a spot for this guy or we have to work on a loan or whatever. They'd like to know. That said, I don't think it's if it's not done by June 30th, it's not happening. They could theoretically terminate the contract at any point.
Ivan Fedotov's contract got terminated in March.
Yeah, exactly. They can terminate that contract any day they want, as long as they are sufficiently motivated to do so.
And I thought you had a good kind of this was the follow-up about you've navigated Fedotov, you're dealing with the Michkov situation. You're not that worried about dealing with Russian players, basically. And Danny said, I think we've shown we're not.
Yeah, exactly. And the two guys obviously at the top of the draft, Salayev and Demidov, I'm not expecting them to be available at 12. Frankly, I'd be surprised if either of them are available even at 7 if they do make this rumored trade up with Ottawa. But there are other Russians, there's Chernyshov, who is a legitimate option, not necessarily at 12, but if he slips, maybe he could be a trade-up option. There's Artemonov, who Alex Appleyard really likes. I like him a lot too. There are other Russians that are theoretical options with that second pick. And it certainly doesn't seem like Danny would be scared to take any of them.
I really did.
Here's a theory, and this is legitimately just a theory. Normally, Brent Flair is at this. And he went back with Chuck. He always was right next to Chuck Fletcher at this week before the draft presser. Last year, he was there. It was Brent and Danny. This year, we were told Brent Flair is traveling. Now, my guess is that right now, over the last 2 days, there has been a showcase of the Russian players down in Florida for everybody that is under the Dan Milstein umbrella from an agency standpoint. It would not shock me in the slightest if that is where Brent Flair is right now.
Did you hear the rumor? Elliot Friedman floated this the other day. Other teams believe, because all of a sudden a whole bunch of shit has come out about Demidov. Mm-hmm. Other teams believe that there's one team that really, really wants him. And so they are purposely being actually, he's 5'10". It's the dude's 6'1".
Apparently. Apparently he is. He's 6'1.5". Yeah. So rounded up to 6'1". Yeah. He's bigger. He apparently is much better at English than people realize. He seems like a delightful young man from everything I've heard. But I do not think the Flyers are spreaders of that disinformation.
I would hope not, but also I kind of do.
There is something funny, though, about the idea of something ironic a bit, of the idea of NHL, U.S. NHL team spreading disinformation about a Russian.
That's very funny.
It's quite funny, actually.
It is. Something I found very interesting that Danny, when the whole idea of Russian prospects and Matvei Michkov came up, the comparison between the time frames for Michkov and Bonk, where it's like, we worry about, well, when's he coming over? And he's got this contract. And like specifically Michkov, like he's got a 3-year deal. We'll see him when we see him. We have no idea. And it's like, well, we took Bonk in the same year in the same first round. He played juniors last year. He's probably going to spend another year in London. After that, he might spend a year in the AHL. He might be on the exact same time frame.
It's a reasonable point.
So it's not like, oh man, these Russians were terrified of them. They very much believe in this like development plan. And Danny said, like, I rode the bus for 4 fucking years. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in the NHL, and it's something I had to deal with, and it ultimately helped my development. And we've heard Keith Jones say something similar in the past, like when talking about Jamie Drysdale. Like, still should be in the AHL. It's like, really? Because he's 23. It's not all that encouraging from like I want my new toys now. But to look at it this way, oh yeah, it is kind of like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Like, we get, especially in this town where we're so Eagle-centric. I got your back, Jack Fritz. Like, you draft a guy, and it's like, well, we need Jalen Carter to come in and be the best player on our defense. It's like, that is not what happens in hockey unless you draft one, and even then, it's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't. Like, I think we get so stuck in that. Like, we want our guy.
We do.
It's like 18-year-olds making the NHL is very hard.
Hockey's different. That said, the reason why it was such a big deal with Michkov is because, number one, top 10 picks tend to get there sooner. Number two, I think
there's a war.
Well, it's not even that, of course, but it's more like Oliver Bonk was taken, and everybody was like, yeah, he's going to take some time. Like, he's not a finished product, and nor is Michkov. But Michkov could play in the NHL right now.
Yes,
he probably could have played in the NHL last year. Like, he was skilled enough. He wouldn't have been a finished product. You would assume he's going to get better. He probably would have got pushed around a little bit from a size standpoint. But skill-wise, he could have played in the NHL.
He is good enough to play.
Probably put up, at least 40-ish points, I would think. So knowing that he could play, but he's not allowed to, that was the frustration.
And, we get that. I am just trying to find, just in terms of the draft philosophy, I think that comparison kind of shows that, one, they're very much committed to long-term development. Like, they believe that to be an important part of it's not just draft, it's draft and develop.
It's very much a let them cook type of philosophy.
And two, why would we be afraid of that time frame when we're going to impose it on half of our guys anyway? Michkov's going to come over and play in the NHL because, one, he's going back if he doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And two, he's good enough. But we take a guy at 32, get ready to watch him with the Phantoms. Before we go any further, I got to tell you about the great people at Rite Aid Pharmacy. I've been telling you about the Rite Aid Pharmacy services. And first thing you got to know, man, it's real beneficial to have a My Pharmacy account at Rite Aid because you can refill your prescriptions, schedule a vaccine, get personalized care recommendations, and sign up for prescription notifications. And all you need to get started, it's a prescription at Rite Aid. You just go to riteaid.com/mypharmacy, sign up for the account, and boom, all your prescriptions right there. And so you can stop stressing about your prescriptions and let Rite Aid refill them automatically. You can enroll in automated courtesy refills. It's free and easy. Not freezy like yesterday. It's free and easy, and most prescriptions qualify. You can talk to your Rite Aid pharmacist or sign up through My Pharmacy, through your My Pharmacy account at riteaid.com. Restrictions may apply, and you can get your prescriptions the same time with one-trip refills. We all know how big a pain it is. This comes in halfway through the month, and then, the second week of every other month, I get this prescription. You can ask your pharmacist to sync your medications so you can pick them up all in one visit. You can sync with other family members, too, just to make it that much easier. Ask your local Rite Aid pharmacist to get started. Once again, restrictions may apply, and you can manage your prescriptions with the Rite Aid mobile app. Transfer or refill, sign up for medication reminders, enroll in prescription notifications. All you got to do is download the app from the Apple Store or Google Play. Transfer your prescriptions to Rite Aid today. Just go to riteaid.com/transfer. Rite Aid caring pharmacists ready to answer your questions and help you stay healthy. Get your prescriptions along with anything at Rite Aid you may need, including over-the-counter medicines, household products, cosmetics, and more. Just ask your pharmacy team for details. Restrictions apply. All right, what else did we take out of this here? The idea of selling maybe a prospect on joining the rebuild here, and the idea that if a prospect is like, oh, this team I'm going to go over, and they want me to develop all this time, and then they're not going to be very good. I like the idea that Danny is selling this as you have the chance to be part of something special. Yeah. There's a ton of opportunity here if you put in the time to develop. We have unlimited opportunity here, basically. It's not as if this roster is set for the future by any means. Whereas, yeah, man, the Devils are drafting in the top 10, but you making that team? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I just like that there's like this selling point of we are building something special here. It might take some time, but the opportunity exists.
I think it's a reasonable question to ask, but it's also not something I worry about too much. Because number one,
guys want to play in the NHL.
The vast majority of these guys just want to play in the NHL. Like, yeah, once in a while you run into a Cutter Gauthier who just has a bug up his ass about one particular organization. But for the most part, guys that get drafted are just excited to get drafted. And the Flyers, while fans that follow the team very closely, justifiably have become very frustrated with this organization and the decisions they've made and some of the paths that they've taken, I guess we could say. On the whole, I would say that fans are pretty happy, or not fans, that prospects are pretty happy to be drafted by the Flyers. This is a team that's in a major market, that's on TV a lot, that spends money, that has good facilities. Generally speaking, I don't think there are going to be many players that are going to be terrified to go to Philly.
I just think having lived through what we just did 6 months ago makes it different for everyone.
I considered asking Danny a question about Gauthier and basically asking him if the way the Gauthier situation went down, does that impact the way you approach the draft at all in terms of college guys, in terms of Boston College commits, in terms of being extra sure that a guy actually wants to join your team? I didn't get the opportunity to ask it, but I thought about asking that question. I'm sure the reason why I ultimately did is because I know his answer is going to be no. Even if the answer is yes, he's going to say no.
Yeah, he can't say like, oh yeah, like there's a big black X over Boston College.
Yeah, like we're not touching anybody in BC for a couple years.
Yeah, like
even if that's true, he's not going to say.
He can't possibly say that because I don't want them to say that. Even if it's true, I don't want them to say it out loud. Something else I did appreciate. I don't know who asked the question about the recent veteran Euro signings, Abols and Rodrigo Abols and Oscar Eklund. But they made the comparison to the next Raffle or Belmar, and I like that. Like, we have a vet, a little bit older guy, going to bring him over. And Briere said, it's on them. We'll see. Maybe it works out. Maybe it doesn't. That'll be up to them. Yeah. Like, trying to unearth these guys is a good, cheap way to kind of have those bottom of the lineup dudes that you don't have to go out and sign a Garnett Hathaway every time if you find a Belmar.
I would agree. And I actually think that, if I remember correctly, in the article that Alex Appleyard wrote for us on allphly.com for diehards only, he did an in-depth scouting report earlier this week of Rodrigo Abols, and he made the Belmar comparison, not stylistically, but more in terms of like, this guy's coming over. He's a guy in his late 20s who has established himself as a legitimately good SHL player. He's coming over to win a job. Now, whether he can depends on how well he plays in camp or how good he does down in the minors. But he's not coming over just because maybe it'll work out. He thinks he can win a job. He wants an NHL career. And it would be, the way Alex, I think, put it was, it would be a disappointment if he doesn't make the team. As opposed to Eklund, who's a bit younger, who maybe comes over with the understanding that, I'm going to spend some time in the AHL. Abols is coming over because he thinks he can win a job out of camp.
And competition's good for everybody. This last thing, before we get into some of the rumors and shit more from yesterday, just the last thing that came up in the press conference was the Ian Laperrière extension. There was the Saravalli tweet after it was announced yesterday, future NHL head coach. Yeah.
I woke up to people freaking out about that.
And I fully acknowledge, like, one, coaching, like, the way football's the easiest thing because there's so many specialized, like, you can be a head coach, but maybe not equipped to teach O-linemen proper technique, you know?
Sure.
Like, there's different skill sets
Well,
for each.
apparently, if you follow the Eagles, you could be a head coach if you do actually
If you
nothing.
you're just, you just have the office.
Office.
You just signed up for the job.
Not really sure what Nick Sirianni does here anymore, but I guess he's the head coach.
Good for him.
Anyway, continue.
But, like, that's the thing. Like, that's listen, say what you want about the fucking guy. He's been in the playoffs 3 times in 3 years and, like, almost won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, they made a Super Bowl with him as head coach. So
like,
sure.
It must not be horrible, but, like, the Ian Laperrière comparison here is like, all right, we loved him as a player, but would he even still be in the organization? Like, Danny just referenced taking a slap shot to the face.
He was on his team when he did it.
Yes, that was that year.
He might have been on the ice.
I really hope. Anyway, like, if not for that, we question, like, would he even be in the organization? And then the NHL coaching experience, we got the firsthand, man, that penalty kill was fucking horrible. And I wouldn't say his time with the Phantoms has been marked with tremendous success from a winning standpoint.
True.
They made the playoffs this year. They got steamrolled by the Bears, who are awesome. But they won that play-in round or whatever they did. Yeah. Also, what are the success stories coming out? Like, who are the guys? Like, is it Jerry Mayhew? Is that what we're doing here?
I do think they are.
Why can we point at Ian Laperrière and go, he's a future head coach because he does this well?
They personally think he's done a good job developing the young players. They think he's done a good job with guys like Tyson Forrester, with guys like Cam York. They think that those guys who spent, like, high-end prospects who spent time down in the AHL benefited from their time under Lappy. Now, is that provable? Not really. Like, you can't prove a concept like that. Like, would Tyson Forrester be just as good if he had a different AHL coach? I don't know. It's possible. I can't prove it one way or the other. I can tell you the Flyers think these guys have benefited from playing under Lappy.
And I suppose I understand that. But, man, if Tyson Forrester, who they drafted at 20, 22, if Cam York, who they drafted in the teens, don't work out, like, that's a bad pick.
True.
I'm looking at, like, where are the success stories of dudes on this roster who wouldn't be, and, like, again, that is also impossible to say. I get it. It's just like, that's what I'm looking for from, if it's all about development, because it's not the 90s anymore where it's like, yeah, we have a bunch of Peter Whites and Sean McCoshas who are too slow to play in the NHL, but they can score 40, 50 goals in the AHL and we're going to win the Calder Cup because that's what we're trying to do is sell tickets, not develop for the NHL. I get it. They're not that anymore. But, like, where are these players that we're calling up that are like, okay, here they are? Like, why does it have to be Victor Mete and Louis Belpedio early in the season rather than a second or third round pick?
Well, but they would argue, the Flyers would contend that they didn't call up guys like Ronnie Adder and Adam Ginning because they weren't yet ready. And then when they did call them up, they held their own, and they would credit Ian Laperrière for that. Now, again, I don't know. I'm not there. And it's hard, as I said, to prove
it's
any
impossible.
of this because you don't know what would happen in a world where they had a different coach other than Ian Laperrière. I just know the Flyers think very highly of Laperrière and his developmental abilities, and they don't care quite as much about the wins, losses down there. They want the team to be competitive.
Sure.
They want the team to be, playing meaningful games, whether they're winning a Calder Cup or competing for a Calder Cup, I don't think matters to them that much, but they don't want the team to be trash.
Yes.
And they're not trash. You could certainly make the case that they should be better and that maybe a better tactical coach would have them winning more games. But I don't think that's something they care about too much. I think they more are focused on, are our young guys developing well? Are they rounding out their games? Is Lappy helping them become better? They believe he is. Now, going to the Saravalli tweet, there's a couple of things I'll say about that. Number one, and this is undeniably true.
Frank covered him.
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Number one, Ian Laperrière is a great guy. He is like salt of the earth, like just like a genuinely nice person.
100%.
Everyone who's around Ian Laperrière thinks he's a great dude. Like, he's just a friendly guy. So I'm sure Frank is already positively predisposed towards him because he thinks Lappy's a good dude, because he is. I'll also say this, and I'm not saying this because I have any inside information. I will say that if you are an insider and you have sources, sometimes you toss a little back to those sources and say, man, there would be like, if you have an agent who's one of your best sources, maybe you pump the tires of their clients a little bit to get more scoops. Perhaps there's a little bit of like, yeah, when I call Lappy up when I need information, he immediately returns my call. So I'm maybe going to pump his tires a little bit in public and present the idea, at least get the conversation started about like, maybe he should get an interview the next go around. Just saying that when you're in the insider business, there's a lot of like, you scratch your back, like that kind of thing. And that could be part of this.
Absolutely. And again, like the skill sets to be an NHL head coach, it might not matter. Like, oh, well, he didn't win anything in the AHL, so he was a bad penalty kill coach on mediocre teams. Like, so obviously he can't do it. He might be a fucking tremendous coach. Like, that is possible. And he might be being asked to do something else. And right now, like, with the way the NHL team is, I can just see them really liking, Bobby Brink is getting screamed at by this crazy fuck. And we're sending you back because we don't like the way you practiced the last 2 weeks. And Laperrière can go, all right, this is what you need to do, and kind of just get them on the right track without it being, you got to go take your shirt off and threaten to fight him, and then now you're part of the rotation.
I do. Yeah, I get it. And I do understand why Flyers fans kind of went crazy on this, because let's be honest.
We don't like him.
Well, not even that.
We don't like the job he did.
Yeah, there's still a lot of dissatisfaction with the way he coached the penalty kill. I don't think there's a feeling in the fan base that he's necessarily doing a great job with the Phantoms. And this is the key thing. The head coach is old. And there's a feeling of like, well, we're kind of talking about like, well, when Torts is gone, they're going to go out and get some better coach. And it's like, oh God, what if the succession plan is they're going to move Lappy up?
It certainly has crossed my mind. I wonder, because they like to make the players uncomfortable. It's something that they think is important. Like the way we talk, like Buffalo signed a bunch of their young guys, and we're like, we just want you all to focus on the game. You don't have to worry. Guess what? You all have 8-year contracts. We're handing them out. Everyone's signed. Now go play. Don't worry about shit. And the Flyers are like, I don't know. What if we throw a smoke bomb in the locker room and close all the doors? Like, see who gets out. Like, I just think Ian Laperrière is not that guy. Maybe it's the baseball mentality where it's like, yeah, man, we just had Larry Bowa, so we got to bring in Charlie Manuel, who was excellent on the Gargano show today. We got to bring in Charlie Manuel because everyone hates coming to work. Yeah. We got guys who are like,
isn't that kind of what it was with Girardi and Topper?
Yeah. We got guys who are like, I don't even care about the 20 mil. I'm not coming to work. Yeah. Let's bring in someone nice. Yeah. Maybe that's the mentality then, but I would be surprised if it's Lappy, just because I don't think he fits the bill of what they wanted head coach.
He would certainly not be like the flashy hire, which I think the Flyers do. Like, they want to be viewed as like they want to be viewed as a prestige organization. Like, to me, and I mentioned this guy a couple times just because he's like the hot name, but like the Flyers would love to be the team that convinces David Carl to leave college. They would love that, because it shows that like we're the Flyers again.
Yeah, if it's not like
we get our guy,
we didn't get Peter Laviolette, someone of that ilk, someone Ken Hitchcock, a cup winner. You've heard of this coach before. Yeah. It'll be. We got that fucking the guy who turned down the NHL after a couple national titles. We got
exactly.
Like, it'll be something like that.
You would think.
I would, if not an established brand name coach. It's just my guess based on they very much want to be those Flyers again.
They do. They absolutely do.
It's very much part of the goal. Maybe you have different goals. Maybe your goals are a little more financial. Well, you should probably sign up for a credit union like TrueMark Financial, because when you join TrueMark Financial, you become part owner, which means profits come back to you instead of going To shareholders, you can also get better rates, lower fees, a better return on savings, and more flexible options, all while having the same digital tools and tech you've come to expect from your major banking partners. The big difference, maybe the biggest thing that sets TrueMark apart, they've got the local roots. They're headquartered in Fort Washington with 24 branches in the Philly area. That means they serve our community and our people right here at home. Becoming a member of a credit union has so many benefits over being a customer at a bank. Almost seems like a no-brainer. I've told you the JP story a few times before. You think you want to go with a major bank. You think that's where it's safest. And then, one of our co-hosts right here at PHLY wakes up one morning and his bank doesn't exist anymore. Now, on the surface, they got bought up. It's fine. It's just one of these major transactions that happens. You'd think you'd have more than 0 days notice on something like that. Maybe there was something else going on behind the scenes. An institution like TrueMark Financial, they're a little more upfront because, again, they serve you. They have the local roots. You know what's going on at TrueMark Financial. So head to TrueMark.com/PHLY to learn more or find a branch near you. That's TRUMARK.com/PHLY. Federally insured by the NCUA. Is there anything else we want to get to from the presser before we just get into some of this stuff from
let's
yesterday?
get into this crazy rumor.
All right. I have the first question I got to ask, Charlie. If a rumor involves a Canadian club like this one in Ottawa, do we have to spell it with the extra U like the Fleetwood Mac album?
Oh, my God.
Anyway.
Oh, my God. Sure. Sure. I guess it is a rumor.
Yeah, the rumors.
The rumors.
So the rumor yesterday is Flyers and the Ottawa Senators. All right, that's all the time we have. No. So, yes, we have the Travis Yost tweet. The Senators and Flyers have the framework of a trade in place, though this one may go closer to the draft. I love this because it's not even a rumor. It's a rumor of a rumor.
It's a rumor of a rumor.
This is a double rumor. It's telling us absolutely nothing. But as we said a little bit ago, there is so much smoke with Ottawa.
Yeah.
The framework of a trade may go closer to the draft. It tells us nothing, but there's something going on, Charlie. This is very exciting because, listen, I will be shocked if Brady Tkachuk is. There's just no way they're trading. They're not yet 25-year-old captain and best player.
Would be blown away.
That would be very fucking surprising.
Yes.
However, there are some very intriguing pieces, whether it's one of the defensemen, whether it's Shane Pinto, who the Flyers have been rumored to be interested in for a while. Like Jacob Chikrin came up at the trade deadline. We've heard his name for years because of the local connection. There's something there. You've heard, even though DJ Smith is gone, they still like Scott Lawton.
Yes.
Can you give us a morsel? Can you give us anything? Is there something else beyond something's happening, maybe?
What I can say is that, number one, I was told yesterday that, and at least at the moment, Lawton is not part of. He's not imminent. He's not in a position where he's imminently going to be traded. Doesn't mean he's not going to be traded. Just that, this isn't Scott's preparing to pack his bags. He's not imminently going to be traded. That's what I was told. I've talked to people around the league that are pretty sure this is probably something to do with trading up. Travis Yost then today hinted at just as much. Basically, I think he quote tweeted a Siobhan Nolan tweet from the presser, basically saying the Flyers are looking to trade up. And given the fact that yesterday he was the guy who said there's a framework of a trade in place, you can connect the dots. I've heard that, it seems like the trade up is what this is about. Does that mean it's a certainty? No. The other thing I heard was that, again, this is contingent on certain guys being available, which is why they're not going to do this deal now. There's probably a couple guys they really, really like, and if they're available at 7, they might do a deal. If they're not, maybe they'll just wait until 12. So I don't think this is a lock to go down. But based on everything I've heard, again, not just over the last day, but over the last 3-4 months, these two teams have been talking.
And the way Travis Yost frames it, the framework is in place. That kind of feels like, yeah, man, if the dude's there or a group of players is available at 7, they have already kind of pre-negotiated. This is what it'll take if you want to move up to 7.
Like, okay, let's get it done.
Yes.
But
and
it's not going to get done.
Like, that's why it's not being announced yesterday.
Exactly.
It's going to be closer to the draft, perhaps even on draft day. That would make the most sense. You're looking to trade up.
And none of this info really, I guess, aside from, I don't think I had ever straight up said that I had heard that that Ottawa still likes Lawton. I did hear that around the trade deadline. I did not think it was going to happen at the trade deadline because I did not think the Flyers wanted to trade Scott Lawton at the trade deadline. But I heard that Ottawa still liked him. I reported, it was Elliot Friedman who very much confirmed that they talked about Chychrun. So that's the insider. I actually had never heard Chychrun's name really pop up, but it popped up from so many people who are plugged in that I'm like, okay, there's probably something to that. I can't imagine that Elliot is completely wrong. The Pinto stuff dates back to the start of last season.
Yeah, it goes back to his suspension.
Yeah, and when I was poking around in late May, early June, when I got back from my vacation, I also heard Pinto's name come up again. So I think that there's something there. Now, whether Ottawa actually is willing to trade him, I don't know. What I've heard with Pinto is that contract negotiations with him in Ottawa have been fraught. And if you don't think you can get a guy at a contract that you think is acceptable, sometimes you decide to trade said player. So the Pinto stuff is not new. The Shabbat stuff, I mentioned that at the trade deadline, that everybody's talking about Chychrun. The guy I had heard was Shabbat, which I was a bit confused about because I'm trading for a 27-year-old guy with an $8 million cap, it doesn't seem to fit the timeline. That said, Frank Saravalli did put in his article that they want to re-sign Chychrun. They might need to clear up space to do that. If Shabbat is more of a cap dump than a guy you have to trade an insane amount of assets for, maybe that does become palatable to the Flyers, who look at it as, well, this guy is a legitimate top pair defenseman who we can pair with Jamie Drysdale for the next couple years and help him to develop properly the NHL level. I heard Shabbat's name a few times. I think Anthony Sanfilippo in the past has reported Matthew Joseph was a potential guy who they could take back a bad contract, but the Flyers wanted to get an asset in order to do it. So maybe he's a name that's involved. There just has been so much smoke around the Flyers of Ottawa from so many different people, both in the public sphere and people I talk to as sources, that I have to believe that these two teams at some point are going to get something done.
It just feels like momentum is going that way. And let me take a quick second to tell you about our friends at Olipop. Olipop is the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefits of plant-based fiber, prebiotics, and other botanical ingredients to support gut health. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar in every can, plus 9 grams of fiber in every can. 2 out of 3 Americans say they suffer from digestive issues, and 95% of Americans don't get the daily recommended amount of fiber. Olipop is tackling both these issues with a drink that tastes just like soda. Prebiotic fiber is the food source for the beneficial probiotic bacteria in your gut, and Olipop has 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can that can help support your digestive health. And now Olipop, yes, it's available online at drinkolipop.com and in almost 30,000 retailers, including the most recent launch at Wawa. You know how much I love Wawa, and now Olipop, Wawa. They go hand in hand. It's absolutely perfect. You get your Hoagie Fest $6 classic. You get an Olipop alongside of it. Boom. You're taking care of your digestive issues and drinking a delicious soda. I've been to Wawa a couple times already today. I got my Olipop this morning. You should do the same thing. But if you're maybe looking for a big order, maybe you want to get a case of the Olipop, maybe you want a whole bunch of different flavors, more than just what they have available at Wawa, go to drinkolipop.com and use the code PHLY20 for 20% off your next Olipop order. Discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscriptions. You can also get it online at Amazon and in the 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and GoPuff. Drinkolipop.com, PHLY20. I think you'll be happy you did it.
What I will say again about this rumor, though, and I sort of hinted at this on Twitter, and I'll say it straight up here. This rumor was tailor-made to make Flyers Twitter go insane because
I started salivating.
Because it's something is going to happen. This is what they're saying. It's saying something is going to happen, which is what so many people want.
We don't know what and we don't know when.
But it allows fans to, whichever player they want traded or whichever player they desperately want, it allows them to just insert your dreams here. Like, I had people in my mentions being like, they're bringing back G. Then I had people saying it's Brady.
The crazy guy in my DMs is going nuts that they're bringing back the soft bum G.
Yeah, they're bringing back G. I have tons of people being like, it's TK. They're trading TK for 7, which, like, I really think they want to re-sign him, guys. I'm sorry, but a lot of people want Travis Konechny traded.
Yeah.
And this allows them to dream that this is the vehicle that is going to get TK traded. It would be really funny if, like, the ultimate trade is like the Flyers take back Matthew Joseph's contract.
It's
something super boring.
It's not even. That's very much what I think it's going to be. Or like, we're going to give you 51 for 60 and 63 or whatever. Like, it's going to be something like that.
But it allows fans to insert their dreams into this trade that they now are certain is going to happen, but they don't know the details. So whatever details they want it to be, that's what it can be, which is why, like, Travis Yost, this was the perfect tweet to send Flyers Twitter into fits of insanity. And honestly, it's kind of like I respect the strategy, Travis.
It was great, Charlie. I was firing up. I was getting my camera connected. I was ready to go for an emergency pod like as soon as I got home yesterday. I was salivating. Yes, trade time. Let's do it. And of course, other teams are doing stuff. So it's like, well, yeah, the Flyers got to do stuff now too. It was, it's already like 10 after.
And the big thing too that helped the credibility of it. This should be, and I like Travis Yost. I've actually never met him, even though he's an analytics guy, but I have a lot of respect for him. Yeah. What really helped the credibility of this report is that Yost was the guy who nailed the Markstrom trade that morning before anyone else. So you're like, not only, this isn't even just like an insider. This is an insider who, like, less than 12 hours earlier broke the last big trade. And now he's saying the Flyers are going to make a trade too. It was the perfect storm for people to be like, it's happening. Shit's going down.
It was a fun day on Twitter, honestly. And those are fewer and further between these days, given the state of Twitter and Earth. It's like 10 after. I want to get to PLD tomorrow. I want to get to this Rangers Goodrow story tomorrow.
It's F around Friday.
F around Friday. We can do whatever the hell we want. So that'll pretty much do it for us today. Is there anything else that came out? Anything else you think it's imperative we talk about before we get out of here?
No, not really.
Right.
I think this was a busy enough day. We talk. We obviously have the Danny press conference. We break down this insane. I don't even like. Do we call it? Is it a rumor? Is it a report? It's somewhere in the middle between a rumor and a report.
Yeah, like
because it's a report on a rumor.
It's a report that something's happening.
But
we don't know what or when.
This is probably the best way to put it. It's a report that leads to rumors.
Yes, like in terms of the the W's that you didn't go to the journalism school, I did. Like who, what, when, where, why, and how. We have who. We have the teams.
Yeah.
We have none of the other questions.
None of the other details.
We have none of the other W's or the H. All right, so that'll do it for us today on PHLY Flyers. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Make sure you're following the YouTube page. Set those reminders. Never miss a live show. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. And follow the podcast. Make sure you're subscribed there as well. PHLY Flyers, wherever you get those. We'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow for F Around Friday. Until then, my name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.